The pregnant widow bought a farm for $1, but something was still living there. This sounds impossible, but I swear every single word of this story is true. I recount this experience from the depths of my broken family in Cedar Creek, Iowa, during a summer that felt impossibly long in 2018. The moment I crossed through the rusted gate of that forlorn property, shadows danced across the fields, whispering the name of my late husband as though his spirit lingered there, heavy and oppressive in the air. A chill coiled around my body, sharp against my skin, while the earthy scent of decay mingled with the sweetness of wildflowers blooming out of season, creating an odd juxtaposition that made my heart race. The metallic taste of fear lodged in my mouth, a forewarning of the dark history soaked into the very soil that was now our home. With only the crumbling barn as shelter for myself and my unborn child, I thought I could rebuild our lives in this new place, escaping the ghosts of my past. Yet little did I know this property was anything but abandoned. The first time the boards of that barn groaned in the night, and I heard my name echo back softly, I froze, feeling a gut-wrenching dread settle in my stomach, tangling with the exhilaration of new beginnings. What had I brought myself into? I tried to shake off the feeling, convincing myself that the readings deep in the soil were merely remnants of my grief and guilt, artifacts of a heart divided by loss. As I wandered through our new home, my melancholy shadow twisted around me, the feeling of unease thickening the air. Waves of tension hummed like electricity, sending chills racing down my spine each time I felt an unseen gaze fixed upon me. Objects shifted in the twilight. A chair moved slightly, or perhaps a knife on the counter slid an inch. I realized I had become a part of whatever was haunting this land, yet I continued to push these uneasy feelings aside. They settled into my mind, commonplace, like the oppressive weight of grief settling in my soul, tethering me to the sadness from which I sought to escape. That first night was the hardest. The wind howled, each gust bringing with it harsh whispers that wove through the cracks in the barn walls, not unlike the restrained sobs of a mourning widow. Unable to fight the urge any longer, I stumbled outside into the field, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Would I ever return to the woman I used to be? In my mind, I had left the ghost of my husband to rest, but whatever lurked within that land craved something more from me. Was this presence feeding off my sorrow, or was it simply a haunting searching for relief, desperate to have its story told? Days turned into weeks, and the reality began to crystallize. I was not alone. Each evening crawled upon me with the weight of 1,000 eyes. The animals on the farm reacted to unseen forces. The birds circled ominously overhead, trapped in a tempest, while my loyal dog barked mercilessly at curled shadows that flickered just outside the barn's protective edge. The energy around me pulsed rhythmically, a strange mix of fear and familiarity, like a drum drawing me closer to a truth long buried deep within the soil beneath my feet. It was as though the very footprint of histories not yet unfolded was beckoning me. With every passing moment, I felt a growing urgency to uncover the truth. I was certain that I was being guided towards some important revelation, one that pressed heavily on my consciousness. But as the days drew on, however, I found solace in the notion that perhaps this presence was laced with sorrow, a reflection of my own. It longed for the same understanding I craved. On a particularly restless night, the flicker of the barn's light seemed to illuminate a truth I had never fully comprehended. With bated breath, I ventured toward the shadows, compelled as a moth dances around an open flame. In that dim light, whispers began to coalesce, each one a longing call, a plea for someone to remember, someone to forgive, someone to set their spirit free. The sadness washed over me, embedding itself in the very marrow of my bones. As I listened intently, I realized the spirits that roused within the dark corners of my home did not wish to harm me or my child. Instead, they meant to be seen. They desired their stories told, hidden memories clawing their way back to the light. Yet, as I dove deeper into the land's history, an unsettling realization began to dawn. I confronted dark truths that stretched beyond my own grief, ones that seemed to cling to me, urging me to understand the price of this knowledge. My child was my anchor, my beacon of hope in a tempest laced with uncertainty. But I was left terrified of what it could mean to bring new life into this turbulent environment. I could feel the unknown, a presence that loomed larger than both love and anxiety, dynamically merging with my desperation to unravel the twisted tales buried within the land beneath our home. I could not help but ponder the implications of what I had uncovered. Now, I know that what many call hauntings may very well be desperate attempts from the other side to reconcile their turmoil, their cries echoing through time, seeking to connect with the living. So I ask you, how far would you go to unearth those buried sorrows when your child's future hangs in the balance? As the weeks passed, an unshakable sense of anxiety took root within me, refusing to loosen its grip. Each night, as the shadows in the barn deepened, I could feel an unsettling presence grow more pronounced, threading itself into the very fabric of my existence. The atmosphere grew heavy, laden with tension, each creak of the floorboards echoing through the stillness like a dark omen. I couldn't deny that something was stirring, and I feared it wasn't benevolent. The first physical evidence of my torment came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes with trembling hands, I turned to find my loyal dog, Baxter, fixated on a corner of the barn. His fur bristled as he barked furiously, a feral growl rumbling deep in his throat. I felt a shiver race down my spine, my heart pounding in my chest. "Baxter, come here," I called, my voice betraying the fear I tried to suppress. But his eyes remained locked on the shadowy corner, unblinking, even as I took a hesitant step closer. Then I noticed it, a faint outline flickering against the wall like an old film reel caught in a moment of static. It was as if the air itself reverberated with a silent cry, echoing the suffocating need for acknowledgement that I sensed deep within me. I stumbled backward, my breath quickening. "What is it?" I whispered, half hoping to hear an answer, half dreading a reply. In the days that followed, things escalated. I awoke one night to find small, indented handprints on the wooden railing of the loft above. They were child-sized and icy to the touch, as though a little spirit had been playing beneath the stars, longing for connection. The chill that enveloped them sent me spiraling into a whirlwind of dread. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. What kind of entity was I inviting into my life? Would they view my child as a potential playmate or something more sinister? I recalled the stories of this place, tales of families torn apart by tragedy, lives lost to untold misfortunes. Each whisper in the wind seemed to beckon me to listen, to uncover the layers of secrets buried deep in the earth, coated with years of dust and despair. If these spirits were calling for help, could I be the vessel to forgive their pasts? Or was I merely a pawn in a haunting designed to unravel my sanity? With reluctant determination, I began my search for answers. I sought the guidance of local historians and old residents, unearthing the stories buried in the crackling pages of dust-laden books. Every account pulled me deeper into the haunting lore of Cedar Creek, the names of the lost lingering in my mind like a haunting lullaby. I stumbled upon accounts of a family who had once thrived on this land, only to meet ruin in a tragic fire. Each detail felt like an echo. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, revealing a tapestry woven from lives unmatched by anything ever known. Yet the more I learned, the more anxious I became. Their sorrow echoed mine, amplifying my grief. I felt as if I were trapped within an intricate web of historical shadows, desperately seeking clarity, but feeling overwhelmed by the weight of their stories. How could I help when I could barely help myself? Each time my child rolled over in my womb, their movement reminded me of the life I was determined to protect, yet also the dangers that lurked within the space we called home. The presence that surrounded me grew both familiar and foreboding. It was as though the spirits wished to convey something, to reveal the truth behind their turmoil. One night, while hunched over an old newspaper clipping from the local library, I caught the faintest hint of a whisper woven into the rush of wind through the barn's gable. It sent a jolt of awareness, a deep recognition. I glanced toward the window, half expecting to see an apparition hovering just outside, waiting for the right moment to plunge headlong into a conversation cloaked in shadows. Suddenly, I wasn't just hearing whispers anymore. Their messages began to form into partial sentences. "Help! Us!" floated on the air, chilling me to my core. I felt the urgency behind those words wash over me, blurring the line between fear and compassion. Sitting in the center of my dimly lit barn, I began to understand. I was not just an observer. I was becoming a crucial link in their desperate search for acknowledgement and release from their tortured fates. As nights turned into haunting dialogues with the unseen, I returned to my roots. Every family tale, every tradition, every piece of knowledge handed down through generations. I began to honor the land with rituals from my childhood, lighting candles, leaving offerings of flowers and herbs, willing to bridge the divide between worlds. I asked for guidance, for protection for both me and my child. My heart raced each time I felt shadows move closer, a peculiar mix of fear and exhilaration igniting deep within. What if I dared to confront this? What if I acknowledged the darkness that clung bitterly to my home? If I could understand their past, perhaps I could lay it to rest. I gripped my growing belly, feeling a swell of love and determination. Little did I know, the creeping dread wasn't merely a foreboding shadow. It was the precipice of change. Would I have the courage to confront the unimaginable, or would I be consumed by the very darkness I sought to unravel? As I stared into the reflections of my own sorrow, I felt the spirits whispering beneath the veil of fear, begging to be recognized as more than just ghosts. They were remnants of memories longing to be freed. The task ahead was daunting, but I was driven by the need to understand, to heal, both for them and for myself. As I stood there, wrapped in the shadows of the barn where I sought solace, the tension coiled tighter around my heart. With each passing night, the whispers grew bolder, often tinged with desperation that made the air feel charged with both dread and urgency. I felt an undeniable pull toward the unseen presence that lingered amid the aging beams and weathered walls. They were beckoning me, and deep within my soul, I sensed a significant choice loomed, a confrontation with the very essence of the unknown that could shatter my fragile peace or lead to liberation. On one particularly moonlit night, driven by desperation, I decided to venture deeper into the mysteries of this land. I gathered everything I had learned about the property, decorating the old wooden table in the barn with photographs, scraps of newspaper articles, and remnants of forgotten stories. Each piece felt like a vital part of a puzzle that needed to be solved. I laid out fresh flowers, sweet-smelling herbs, and lit candles, whispering a soft prayer into the stillness of the night. As the candle flames flickered, I took a deep breath, letting the scents mingle in the air like forgotten promises. "Let those who dwell here speak to me," I said, my voice resolute despite the tremor of uncertainty that laced my words. "I am here to listen, to remember." And with that, I closed my eyes and focused, pushing through layers of trepidation like a diver plunging into deep, unknown waters. At that moment, the temperature around me dropped sharply. A visceral chill settled on my skin, and the shadows began to twist and thin as if they were weaving themselves into a tapestry of the past. I could feel the weight of countless eyes, those who had walked this land long before my arrival, bearing down on me, their stories etched in silence. Little by little, whispered echoes began to form into coherent phrases. "Help us. Remember," they implored, each utterance spinning a thread of connection that tied my heart to their sorrows. The world felt suspended, every breath a prayer, every heartbeat an offering. I opened my eyes again and was struck with vivid sensations. The musty scent of aged wood and faint traces of smoke curled in on themselves like long-forgotten memories. Then came the sound, gentle as a breeze, yet urgent like the crack of thunder. "We are here, hear our cries, set us free." With those haunting words etched in my mind, an image flickered across the dimly lit space like a strobe light. The flickering specters of a family curled around a small child playing in the yard. The scene played out like a forgotten movie reel. My heart pounded in my chest as the figures, shrouded in a haze of blue and gray, turned to me with expectant, sorrowful gazes, a desperate plea to be acknowledged. "Please," a voice resounded, breaking through the veil. "Forgive us." The tension melted away slightly, replaced with an overwhelming sorrow that felt familiar, yet otherworldly. I understood then, this was not simply a haunting. It was a collective memory trapped in the twilight, ringing with regret and longing. They desired not only acknowledgement but also absolution for a tragedy they could not escape. I found myself compelled to delve deeper, one rumination at a time. I reached for my notebook, pen trembling in my fingers as I jotted down everything I could recall from the stories I had collected. Page after page filled with scrawled notes on the families who had once flourished here, each name, each life extinguished in flames and sorrow. With every stroke of my pen, I felt the weight of grief lift slightly, as though I were sharing the burden of their stories. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the barn, extinguishing my candles and shrouding me in dark silence. My heart raced. I felt a shudder ripple through my core. The shadows quivered, swirling tighter around me, thick with unspoken tension. It was as though the entity sought confrontation. "What do you want from me?" I gasped, the clenching fear threatening to swallow me whole. A pause. Then I felt it. The soft touch of a gentle breeze against my cheek, the unmistakable sensation of someone leaning close, their presence wrapping around me like a slow, healing embrace. "Truth," came the response, barely a whisper yet resonating deep inside my soul. "Knowledge. Release." With trembling breath, I closed my eyes and sank deeper into the moment. What if I could unearth the truth of this family's fate? What if acknowledging the full weight of their history would lighten my own burden and allow them peace? Somehow, it felt like the key to liberation for both of us. A shared understanding that not only connected us through grief, but also opened a pathway toward healing. Taking a deep breath, I nodded slowly, the gravity of the moment settling over me like a dense fog. "I will help you," I promised, the resolve in my voice firming as I spoke. Each word ignited a flicker of hope, a shared bond born of sacrifice and love that flowed across realms. But just as I felt grounded in purpose, a great gust of energy surged through the barn. It rattled the walls and sent a swarm of leaves spiraling from the crevices, swirling in a frenzied dance. The shadows surged closer, overwhelming my senses, engulfing me in a cascade of feelings: fear, urgency, but something else too, relief. In that moment, I understood that to heal a wound, one must first confront the pain beneath the surface. And so, I began my journey to unearth the sorrow of the land, vowing to discover the truth behind the haunting legacy that lay deeply rooted in the soil. No longer merely an observer, but a vessel for their stories, a bridge between the past and the hope for the future. I could feel their energy, their longing intertwined with my own, guiding me towards the truth meant to free us all. The following days melted together in a haze of determination and dread. Armed with the promises I made to the unseen spirits of Cedar Creek, I delved into researching the land's tragic history. I combed the local library's archives, piecing together fragmented accounts of previous owners and hidden lives. My quest transformed not just in the pursuit of knowledge, but with each discovery. I felt a bridging of the divide between our worlds, a combining of destinies desperate for resolution. One evening, after a long day of searching through dusty ledgers and brittle newspapers, I returned home feeling drained yet invigorated. My hands trembled with excitement while I paced the barn, rehearsing the stories I had uncovered. The fires. They were set on purpose. I whispered to the shadows encircling me. There were rumors of jealousy and greed. Someone wanted something from them. In that moment, the air thickened, causing my heart to race. I sensed their curiosity. The shadows flickered around me, drawing closer, as if they could not only hear my words, but feel the disbelief radiating off me. I grabbed my notebook, feeling the urgency in the atmosphere escalate. Did someone betray you? Did someone want your land for themselves? The questions hung heavy in the air, vibrating with intense energy. My mind raced. This was far beyond anything I had anticipated. This family's pain was linked to some terrible injustice, a dark stroke of betrayal. As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows deepened throughout the barn. I chose to set up a small seance that night, a means to facilitate communication, to encourage their stories to flow freely. I lit candles and arranged a small table where I spread out objects I had gathered, including photographs of the family I suspected had lingered there for decades, waiting for their truth to be revealed. I felt a gentle pulse in the air, almost as if the spirits acknowledged my intentions and were gathering close in anticipation. Suddenly, the temperature surged, and for an instant, the world around me transformed as the shadows coalesced into figures, barely visible but undeniably there, shimmering at the edge of my consciousness. I recognized them, the faces of a woman, 2 children, and a sturdy man. Their features twisted with emotion. The woman's anguish pierced through me, a silent scream echoing back through the years. "Help!" I heard, though it was not a sound I could place. It danced around my ears like smoke, wrapping around my heart and holding me captive. No longer did they appear merely as shadows. They pulsated with life, memories begging to be acknowledged. The realization washed over me. This family was not lost in a haunting. They were trapped in a nightmare, their history mingling with mine, begging for a chance at liberation. "Tell me what happened," I urged. "Share your truth." I watched in awe as a cold wind wrapped around my fingers, swirling the candle's flames into a waltz of vibrant colors, dark blues, furious reds, and gentle whites, each hue telling a different fragment of their untold story. I could no longer sit in silence. Gathering courage, I reached for the crumpled newspaper articles detailing the fires that had taken place decades before. "Is this your story?" I asked, feeling a powerful current run through me. "Did someone burn your home to the ground out of spite?" For a brief moment, there was nothing but silence. But then, an image, vivid and striking. Waning flames illuminated the faces around me, their expressions resolute, yet the ache of loss raw. A sudden understanding washed over me. The fire had not just consumed their lives. It was the catalyst for fraying ties, breaking futures apart. Their ambitions, loves, and hopes had withered into ash, leaving this family adrift, eternally imprisoned by misfortune and malign intentions. Driven by an overwhelming urgency to rectify this injustice, I turned to my research with a renewed fervor. I discovered the name of the alleged arsonist, a man who could just as well have been a shadow himself, hiding from the light of remorse. I spent nearly every free moment combing through old court records and speaking to elders in the community. What I found was not just a name, but a legacy that encompassed greed, betrayal, and ultimately the destruction of a family bound by love. As I dug deeper, the truth began to crystallize. Emotion washed over me as I uncovered testimonies of neighbors who had seen things. They had reported the man's jealousy and his desire to seize their land at all costs. Each memory was a vivid thread, weaving an intricate picture of a shattered life, a family torn apart not by a single act of violence, but by the slow burn of human desire. It was on a damp Saturday afternoon that everything began to shift. I drove out to the property that once belonged to the family, a vacant lot marked by nothing but a charred patch of earth and a few overgrown weeds. I could feel their energy pulsating in the air, hanging around me like an invisible cloak. Standing where they had once lived, I spoke their names into the wind. "I remember you," I whispered, "and I will make sure your story is heard." As I placed stones in a loose circle to create a small shrine, I felt the weight of their histories wash over me. You are not forgotten. Around me, I could sense the air shift. It was as though the spirits themselves surged with new life, embroidered with purpose. At that moment, I promised myself I would confront the man responsible for their suffering, pushing back against the tide of time that had allowed injustice to perpetuate. I would return to the authorities armed with the truth, and I would finally offer this family the release they had desperately sought. Together, we'll bring light to the darkness, I vowed, my heart swelling with the collective energy of my resolve, emboldened by the spirits that surrounded me. And in that instant, I knew I had become an integral part of their journey, tearing down the barriers that had kept them imprisoned for so long. The shadows that fluttered around me were no longer fears. They were allies, ghosts of the past, meeting the potential of healing. The wheel of justice was finally turning, and I was its agent, empowered by the urgency to honor the memories of those who had suffered. I left the land that day with a new mission, a call to action. It was time for the past to reverberate loudly into the present, time for the tormented souls of the Cedar Creek family to find peace. The following days buzzed with an electrifying mix of anxiety and resolve as I prepared for the confrontation ahead. I gathered all the evidence I had amassed about the Cedar Creek family, the testimonials, the articles, and my own notes, each piece meticulously arranged in a folder that felt heavier every time I clutched it. This burden of truth weighed down on me, but it also felt liberating, like carrying the very lives of those who had suffered encapsulated within my grasp. As I stood in front of the mirror on the day of the meeting with the local authorities, I couldn't help but notice the dark circles under my eyes. They were a testament to many sleepless nights spent wrestling with the past, piecing together connections others were too afraid to touch. I straightened my posture, recalling the spirits that lingered around me, those fragments of souls wishing to share their stories. "I'll do this for you," I whispered to the air, channeling my determination into every part of my being. The drive to the county sheriff's office felt like a slow march toward unknown territory, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I arrived at the quaint building, its paint chipped but standing resolute. My heart raced as I pushed open the heavy door, and a wave of unease washed over me. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist, glancing up from her computer, her eyes searching mine for an explanation that likely felt incongruous. "I need to speak with Sheriff Lawson," I replied, firming up my resolve. "It's about an old case." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't question me further. Instead, she picked up the phone and dialed. Moments later, I was ushered into a small office where Sheriff Lawson awaited. A sturdy man with deep lines etched into his face, he wore an expression that screamed caution. "What can I do for you?" he asked, crossing his arms over his chest. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the stories behind me as I pulled out the folder, placing it gently on his desk. "I'm here to discuss the fire that happened at Cedar Creek, the one that destroyed a family and their home. There's more to the story than you know, and I believe that justice hasn't been served." Sheriff Lawson's brow furrowed, skepticism coloring his gaze. "That was a long time ago, ma'am. Investigating something now would require more than just memories. The case was closed. We can't reopen it based on theories and folklore." "This isn't just folklore," I insisted, my voice rising in intensity. "These are real people with real stories attached to their names. The whole town has forgotten them." He eyed me closely, judging my earnestness and the tremor behind my words. "And what do you have to support your claims?" I shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the folder I had prepared. There are eyewitness accounts of jealousy and betrayal from neighbors. I found records of a man who was closely tied to the family. He had motivation to set the fire. Those lives lost cannot be forgotten. They were victims in this unsolved crime, and their memories are crying out for acknowledgement. For a moment, silence enveloped the room, thick and suffocating. I felt my heart thumping violently in my chest. Would he take me seriously, or would my conviction fall on deaf ears? Sheriff Lawson's demeanor shifted, the hardened lines of his face softening just slightly. "I'll take a look at the information," he said finally, picking up the folder and glancing through the notes. "But I can't promise you anything. It's a complicated matter. Many of those involved are long gone or moved away." "Even so," I implored, "they deserve our attention. Their spirits deserve to be acknowledged. If you could rally the community, you might find others willing to speak out." As he continued to consider my words, I could feel the spirits of the Cedar Creek family wrapped around me like a protective shroud. Their energy ignited throughout the room, urging me forward, feeding off my determination. Days flowed into nights as anxiety churned within me, waiting for Sheriff Lawson's response. I poured myself over the details once more, drawing connections, piecing together stories that had long been buried. Each time I closed my eyes, I could hear the whispers of the spirits echoing their memories inside my mind. "Don't forget," they urged, a fusion of urgency and desperation compelling me forward. It was one evening when my phone finally rang, the shrill sound slicing through the quiet stillness of my home. The sheriff's voice came through, steady but bearing a weight of gravity. "We've started interviewing some of the locals who were around back then. Your details match their memories more than we expected. We might have a case." Hope flooded through my veins as I felt the energy of the spirits swelling within me. "Thank you," I breathed. "Let's uncover the truth. Let their stories shine." Over the next few weeks, the sheriff and his team coordinated efforts for a community gathering to discuss the history of Cedar Creek and bridge the gap between the past and present. Flyers passed from hand to hand, each announcing a gathering, where we would all come together to share not only the pain that lingered, but the memories that deserved to be celebrated. It was a chance to bring the long-forgotten stories into the light, putting the pieces of the past back together again. Finally, the day arrived. I arrived early, setting up the makeshift assembly in the town hall, a small room festooned with fluorescent lighting and outmoded decorations. Rows of chairs filled the space as the locals filtered in, casting glances of curiosity and uncertainty at one another. Sheriff Lawson stood at the podium, ready to address the gathering, a blend of old and new faces coming together over a shared story that demanded to be told. As the conversation began, I sat in the front row, listening to voices echoing through the chamber. Neighbors shared their memories, sparks of recollection igniting stories that needed no embellishment. With every testimony, I felt the Cedar Creek family's spirits swirling around us, amplifying the weight of what was at stake. The unresolved histories suddenly came alive, filling the air with an energy that made goosebumps rise on my skin. "Do you remember the Miller family?" an elderly gentleman shouted, his voice resonant. "They never deserved what happened to them. They were our neighbors, our friends. How could we let this slip away?" The crowd buzzed with murmurs of agreement. I felt my heart lift, understanding that we were unearthing something monumental. There was a chain of memories that connected us all. Inspired, I stood, my voice trembling yet resolute. This isn't just about the Millers. It's about acknowledging their humanity, the love and lives they lost. We cannot let this community bury the truths that still haunt us. If we come together, we can give them the justice they have awaited all this time. As the words left my lips, a charged energy coursed through the room, striking chords of compassion and nostalgia. It was incredible how the most painful memories often became the catalyst for healing. When the gathering dissolved into passionate discussions and tears of empathy, I knew we were on the brink of a breakthrough. Sheriff Lawson rallied everyone to stay engaged, to reach out to their pasts, even if it felt painful. As the assembly concluded, I felt comforted by the flood of support surrounding me. The Cedar Creek family now felt safe, their voices merging with the living through our shared dedication to honor their memories. That evening, while winding down, I stood in my barn once more, staring at the shrine I had started. I could sense an uplifting presence, a warmth swirling around me as the flickering candlelight illuminated their names etched into my memory. "You're here," I murmured, tears welling in my eyes. "This is just the beginning. Your stories will live on. Together, we will find justice." As the shadows danced, intertwining with the warmth of the flame, I understood that this journey had far deeper ramifications than I had ever grasped. I was not merely the voice of the lost. I was a bridge connecting their narratives to the present. Together, we would forge a new path illuminated by love and resilience, breaking down the barriers that had encased these memories in silence. And in that space, I felt a profound peace settle. This was our moment. Legends of Cedar Creek would be honored, their truths eternally intertwined with our hearts, forever setting the tormented souls free. The days after the community gathering unfolded like the pages of an unwritten novel, each experience adding depth to the narrative that was being woven. I had opened the door to a collective healing, and the place I had long viewed as eerie began shifting into a sanctuary of shared memory and purpose. Whispers of excitement and nostalgia filled the air as people began reaching out, sharing stories that had long been locked away, hidden beneath layers of time and fear. With the sheriff committed to pursuing leads, we had ignited a fire beneath the embers of our town's history. I spent long afternoons in the local library, combing through old records and clippings, unearthing more pieces of the Millers' story. As I immersed myself in their lives, I planted the seeds for a deeper connection with their journey. Alongside my research, I connected with neighbors who shared memories, some tender, some filled with regret. They spoke of the Millers as if they were still alive, entwining their story with ours. One afternoon, while sitting with Mrs. Whitaker, an elderly neighbor, I listened to her recount her childhood encounters with the family. "I remember the way Mrs. Miller would bake bread," she said, her eyes twinkling as if she were transported back in time. The smell wafted through the air, drawing children to their porch. She loved to see the delights on our faces. As she continued, I could almost visualize the sun-drenched porch, children giggling as they devoured warm loaves, their laughter echoing through the years. Yet I sensed the heaviness in her nostalgia. "They were good people," she whispered, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never understood why they had to suffer. It feels like a stain on our town." Her words settled within me, igniting a determination to not only bring clarity to their tragic fate, but also to celebrate the legacy they had left behind. I mumbled a promise to Mrs. Whitaker, vowing to ensure the Millers' names would not fade into obscurity. With renewed vigor, I curated a collection of stories, an opportunity to create a living history that blended the fragments of their lives with the vibrant fabric of our community. That evening, after returning home, I gathered my journal and began drafting what would become a chronicle dedicated to the Millers. Each page transformed into a canvas where their lives came alive through the voices of those who had known and loved them. I carved out time to write down every story I collected, every memory belonging to the Millers, which breathed life into my mission. As I delved deeper into their memories, something inexplicable happened. Each story sparked moments around the barn that felt charged with energy. Flickering lights danced in harmony with my emotions, every sudden gust of wind giving rise to more whispers. For a fleeting moment, I felt the Millers surrounding me, heartened and hopeful. It was a reminder that in this battle for their truth, I wasn't alone. They were guiding me. As the weeks rolled by, Sheriff Lawson's investigations began revealing threads that had gone unnoticed for years. The renewal of interest had unearthed a local historian, Mr. Peterson, who had meticulously documented everything related to the fire decades ago. With Lawson's help, we arranged a meeting at the sheriff's office, our hearts brimming with anticipation of what we might uncover. That day, the sheriff sat behind his desk, flanked by Mr. Peterson, whose eyes sparkled with the wisdom garnered over a life immersed in stories of Cedar Creek. The smell of old paper filled the room as he meticulously sifted through bound volumes of archives, drawing us closer with tales of the town's past. We've identified some inconsistencies in the original reports regarding the Miller fire, Mr. Peterson said, his voice steady. Evidence points to several instances of neglect in the initial investigation. It was swept under the rug, even labeled as an accident. But it was anything but. With every revelation, my pulse quickened. We were striding deeper into the labyrinth of time, a layer peeled back at a time, revealing the corridors of injustice the Millers faced. The air shimmered with unspoken truths. The wheels of justice began turning, every heartbeat punctuated by the shared desire for redemption. Sheriff Lawson nodded in affirmation, his attention fixed firmly on Mr. Peterson. Do you believe there's enough evidence to pursue charges against the man we suspect? Yes. If we can establish a direct link between him and the arson, we might have a case, Mr. Peterson replied, the contours of hope flickering like the candle flames in my barn shrine. As we discussed specifics, I sensed the spirits coalescing around us, a living tapestry of shared grief turning into resolve. Could we really bring the past into the present and hold accountable those who had betrayed them? It felt audacious, yet the longing for justice eclipsed my fear. Days turned into a blur as we gathered testimonies and sifted through records. Each person who stepped forward added more weight to the burgeoning case against the arsonist, whose name now resonated through the town as a dark whisper of betrayal. The discussions created ripples in the community, shaking the foundations of decades-old narratives that had tried to conceal the truth. One afternoon, I attended a gathering of townsfolk where sympathizers were willing to share their truths. Voices once stifled began to break the silence. Hearts heavy with the burdens of the past started blending into one contesting roar. They were imbued with an urgency that flowed, a collective effort to shift perspectives, to confront the memories that had haunted us all. Standing together, we crafted a letter to the district attorney demanding justice. The stories of pain were paired with faces of the living, fragile but resilient hearts standing firm, unified by a hope to rewrite history. The moment was electrifying. It felt like the spirit of the Millers had woven itself into every person present, fueling our determination. I vividly remember the day we delivered the letter. We formed an impromptu march across town, filled with signs bearing the words, "Justice for the Millers," and "Their names will not be forgotten." The wind surged around us, twining our shared voices into a powerful anthem, a dedication to those who had once walked among us but were silenced too soon. The air shimmered with a mixture of hope and uncertainty as we reached the district attorney's office. I could feel the presence of the Cedar Creek family wrap around me like a protective embrace, encouraging me to step forward and face whatever challenge lay ahead. As we stood there, I thought back to all the moments leading up to this. I had initially entered the barn expecting to encounter ghosts and shadows, but instead, I had discovered not only the anguished cries for justice, but an entire community willing to rise for the truths that had long been buried. It became clear. This was about more than the Millers. It was about everyone who had felt the grief of loss, every parent who wanted to shield their children from injustice, every soul yearning for acknowledgement of the struggles they had experienced. We walked into the office, hearts pounding with expectation, ready to face the tides of change and invoke the truth for the Cedar Creek family. As the future unfolded before me, I stepped toward the looming weight of the past, primed to confront the ghosts that were waiting for their stories to be heard at last. As we entered the district attorney's office, an air of nervous anticipation enveloped us. The room was muted, filled with the scent of old documents and the hum of fluorescent lights. Every footstep echoed as if trying to remind us of the gravity of what we were about to do. "Good afternoon," the district attorney said, barely looking up from a computer screen cluttered with files. "What brings you here today?" I stepped forward, emboldened by the presence of my friends and neighbors who stood resolutely behind me. "We're here to discuss the Miller case," I said, my voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "We believe there's new evidence that warrants reopening the investigation into the fire that claimed their lives." Her brows knitted together, skepticism flickering in her eyes. "That case has remained closed for decades. What evidence could you possibly have that would warrant further consideration?" "Please, just hear us out," I pleaded. "This isn't only a case about a fire. It's a story of a family that deserves justice. Their lives mattered, and we refuse to let their memory be forgotten." The district attorney studied my face, the group behind me stirring in anticipation. "All right," she said cautiously, setting her papers aside. "Show me what you have." I handed her our letter, meticulously detailing the testimonies we had gathered from community members and discrepancies within the original investigation. Silence blanketed the room as she read. The only sound, the occasional rustle of paper. I could almost feel the weight of the Millers' unseen presence, urging us onward. After a few tense moments, she looked up, a hint of curiosity in her expression. "You realize reopening this case won't be simple, right? The man suspected of setting the fire died years ago. Even if he's gone, the truth needs to come out," I countered. "This isn't just about who did what, it's about acknowledging the injustice and honoring a family's memory." "I can't promise anything, but I'll keep your concerns in mind during the review," she replied. "Be prepared. This will stir up old wounds." As we left the office, a mix of exhilaration and worry surged through me. We had taken a significant step, but would it be met with resistance? Would the community stand behind us when the time came to face the past? In the following weeks, a renewed sense of purpose enveloped Cedar Creek. Conversations sparked everywhere, at coffee shops, in homes, and at community meetings as people began sharing their memories of the Millers. Each anecdote became fuel for our mission, transforming feelings of grief into a collective pursuit of justice. Despite the energy propelling us forward, doubts still lingered. What if we faced retaliation from those wanting to keep their secrets buried? Would the truth, once unearthed, be worth the potential chaos? These questions sat heavily on my heart, but I knew we could not turn back. One day, I met with Mrs. Whitaker again. "Every story needs to be told," she said, passion illuminating her eyes. "The Millers deserve to be remembered, not just as victims, but as part of all of us." Her words resonated deeply, reinforcing my conviction. Motivated by the unfolding support, I conducted interviews, trying to gather as many details about the Mills as possible. Each story confirmed what I felt. Together, we were revitalizing their legacy, breathing life back into what had once been silenced. Through one particularly vivid recollection, a neighbor recounted how Mrs. Miller would bake bread for children in the neighborhood. "We'd follow the smell like bees to honey," they laughed. These moments, rich with warmth, reminded me how much the Millers had meant to those around them. The community's renewed connection to the Millers flourished, echoed in coffee shop conversations, heartfelt meetings, and even commemorative gatherings under the stars, where we shared laughter and memories of times gone by. Yet, amidst this progress, the district attorney called me back for an update. Her expression was grave. "While I respect your passion, I need to remind you, reopening this case could have consequences. People may not react positively." "I understand," I replied, holding my ground. "But the truth is worth pursuing. The Millers' memory shouldn't be a burden over our heads. We need to honor them by facing this darkness." She softened slightly, a flicker of respect breaking through her stoic demeanor. "You're courageous, and your passion is admirable. Just know the road ahead may be fraught with challenges. Then let's face them together, I replied, empowered by the support of my community. As I walked back to my car, I felt an energy coursing through my veins, a sense of determination rooted in the Millers' history and the collective voices fighting for truth. I resolved to hold a town gathering, a space where we could openly discuss our next steps and encourage participation in our cause. That evening, I stepped into the barn, my sanctuary where flickering candles illuminated the names of the Millers. "This is for you," I said softly, feeling the energy in the room swell with affirmation. "Together, we'll ensure your stories emerge from the shadows." The following week, our town assembly drew people from all walks of life. Faces I hadn't seen in years filled the room, each marked with a shared history and a hunger for the truth. As I stood at the front, gazing at all those who had come together, I felt an overwhelming sense of solidarity. "I know these conversations are difficult," I said, emotion welling in my throat. "But we need to gather strength from one another. Our goal is not just to seek justice, but to reclaim voices that have been silenced for far too long." Murmurs of agreement crescendoed, affirming the sentiment. Our discussions breathed life into the room, revealing the interconnected tales wrapped around the Millers' story. It became clear that everyone had been touched by the loss. The shadow of their absence loomed large over our community. One resident, an older gentleman named Mr. Jenkins, stood up, his voice quaking. "I remember that night. Saw the flames licking the sky. No one should have to go through that," he said, glancing around at the recollective faces. As the evening unfolded, stories flowed freely. Tears were shed, but laughter resounded too, a vital part of cherishing what had been lost. We reaffirmed our commitment to pursue justice, building our collective resolve. As the assembly concluded, I walked away with a renewed sense of purpose. The process felt less daunting. The stories woven together created a profound tapestry, a testament to the Millers' legacy. I felt the spirits of those who had departed guiding us, reminding us that this journey was not just about the past, but about carving a future bathed in love and acknowledgement. And with that understanding, I vowed to see this through, a promise to return light to the shadows of the Cedar Creek family, knowing that together we could create justice, healing, and remembrance. The Millers would not remain forgotten. Their tale would live on, woven into the fabric of our community for generations to come. In the days that followed our powerful assembly, the air in Cedar Creek was charged with an electric sense of purpose. The walls of silence that had long surrounded the Millers crumbled, one conversation at a time, revealing a collective yearning for justice. Every encounter, whether with friends, neighbors, or even strangers, felt like the small flickers of candles igniting in the dark, converging into a bright blaze that could not be extinguished. As I gathered with my fellow townsfolk at our weekly meetings, the stories continued to pour in. Each narrative, unique yet intertwined, added vital threads to the fabric we were weaving. It was becoming crystal clear that the Millers were not just a tragic footnote in our community's history. They were part of the very heartbeat of Cedar Creek. I turned each shared memory into written accounts, compiling them into a heartfelt pamphlet meant to honor their legacy and raise awareness of our quest for justice. One particularly chilly evening, I found myself in the barn, surrounded by the now familiar flickering of candlelight. I pulled out the intricate handwritten accounts and began reading aloud to the flickering flames as if they could somehow absorb this dedication. "We won't keep you in the shadows," I promised, my voice trembling. "Your story will guide our path." As I spoke, an unusual chill swept through the barn, intensifying the flickering dance of the candles. I stood still, allowing myself to feel the presence of the Millers. Had they been listening? The once familiar feelings of fear transformed into a comforting warmth, wrapping around me like a protective embrace. With gratitude swelling in my heart, I made plans for a larger public gathering, a vigil dedicated to the Millers and all who had suffered loss under similar circumstances. I envisioned flowers, memories shared, and a collective moment of silence. A time for us all to acknowledge the weight of grief and the power of healing. On the day of the vigil, the sunlight dipped low in the sky, casting an ethereal golden hue over Cedar Creek. The community gathered in the town square, their faces showing a mixture of somber reflection and newfound determination. Candles were lit, casting a warm glow that seemed to beckon the spirits of the lost. As I stood in front of the crowd, the air thick with emotion, I saw Mr. Jenkins among the attendees, his face weathered but resolute. Tonight, we honor the Millers and all they represent, the love, the lives lost, and the truth we must reclaim, I began, my voice steady but full of emotion. When families suffer, when voices are silenced, it impacts every one of us. We must remember why we're doing this. It's about truth, healing, and reclaiming what was stolen from them and us. As the words flowed from my heart, I noticed a shift in the crowd, heads nodding, tears glistening in the eyes of many. The energy surged through the square, and I felt the weight of the Millers' stories interlaced with our shared resolve. Once I finished speaking, I encouraged everyone to share their memories and experiences. One by one, neighbors stepped forward, each offering a piece of the puzzle, strong emotions fueling every word spoken. Tears fell like rain, but so did laughter as we celebrated the Millers' warmth and kindness, breathing life into the memories they left behind. When it was finally time for a moment of silence, the air stilled as the candles flickered in unison. It was as if the entire world paused, granting us this sacred space to acknowledge the pain, the loss, and the strength of our community. In that moment, I felt the presence of those we honored, their spirits intertwined with our own, a testament to the power of remembrance. As the night waned, I sat under the stars, feeling a deep sense of tranquility envelop me. The amazing outpouring of support, the individual tales of grief, and the relentless pursuit of justice sang in harmony within me. I glanced up, whispering a silent promise to the Millers, committing to see this through, no matter the challenges ahead. The following week, news broke that the district attorney had agreed to authorize a formal reopening of the investigation into the Millers' case. This monumental victory sent ripples of excitement and hope through the community. We had ignited the flames of change, and it felt as if we were finally turning the corner. As I walked through Cedar Creek, I could feel the energy of those around me, spirits uplifted, hearts united in a common cause. I exchanged conversations filled with optimism, the streets buzzing with anticipation of what the new investigation might unveil. I felt a surge of pride, knowing that the Millers' legacy would endure, not just as a memory of tragedy, but as a catalyst for healing and change. Together, we would honor their story, stitching together the threads of loss, pain, love, and ultimately, justice. This was a moment of rebirth for our community, a journey that had just begun, a promise to turn shadows into light, ensuring that the Millers' stories would guide us and illuminate the paths of those who had yet to be heard. And I knew deep down that whatever lay ahead, we would face it with the strength of unity, buoyed by the power of shared memories and the unbreakable spirit of Cedar Creek.